Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another photo mishmash. This one being broadcast live March 13th, 2019. And as usual, I'm joined by my good friend, pro photographer, Steve Skirch. Steve, how are you doing today?
I'm great. How's everybody doing out there?
I think we're doing pretty good. I feel like I do hear myself from you. Is it playing there somewhere?
No, there's no echo on my side.
Oh, it's on my side. And we're off to a great start.
There we go, folks.
This is that weekly show where we sit down and we chit chat about photography stuff, sometimes the gear on the table. I want to give you a little preview of a bigger video that I'm working on. We give you some Lightroom tips and tricks. We talk about other people's articles that we find fascinating and interesting, and whatever else we might want to chit chat. Like, I wanted to ask Steve, my most recent video, the Mavic 2. Did you have a favorite part of that video, Steve?
What a jerk. I love it. Okay, yeah, and in full transparency to our audience here, I've had my father in town this past week, and it's just been great getting time with Pops. But he's here staying with us, and we've got a full schedule and everything going on. Plus, we've been recording a lot of videos for Penn, and I've got some clients that have some photos. Actually, last week we were talking about a couple large format images that I got from Bay Photo, and I opened them up after the show, and unfortunately they need to be redone. One of them was maybe Bay, the other one was me, but anyway, that's another story. Anyway, we were talking before we went live, and I said, dude, don't call me out on your Mavic Pro 2 video, please, because I haven't had a chance to watch it yet. I literally haven't watched YouTube in 2 days, which is a long time in my world. And what's the first thing you do?
Well, you know what? I think it's a good thing, Steve, to have a little break from time to time. And, you know, I think it also just kind of introduces the audience to who we are. I do spend a lot of time making YouTube content, not always watching it. And I think it's fine for you to not always be up on everything I'm doing, because then I can tell you about it, like, you know, the good friends that we are, like we're having a cup of coffee talking about this Mavic video, whereas it's more conversational that way.
Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of sad though, because we haven't toured together in quite a while now. I mean, for us, it's quite a while considering our schedule last year. And maybe, you know, maybe my stalking tendencies are just becoming less and less as this break is going on. So sorry about that, brother, but I will get to it. I do. I've got everybody out there, subscribe, hit your little bell to get notified. I do all that. But yeah.
Give a thumbs up too.
Yeah. So how was the Mavic Pro 2 video?
Well, I'm pretty happy with it. And, you know, we talked a bunch on the show kind of leading up to the review, and also me taking it off on different places. I'm pretty happy with my thoughts on it, that I had almost 3 months of time flying it, using it all over the world, which I feel very lucky to be able to have done. And it's that little feature of being able to adjust the aperture just makes it such a versatile camera. It's completely full manual control now. If you want, you have shutter speed control, you have ISO control, and you have aperture control. And that might sound minor, but it made a really big difference in my shooting. And so I really appreciated that.
And let's not forget the most important part about that drone. The camera is a Hasselblad.
I thought you might be going there. Yes.
Most likely a Sony sensor. I could be wrong. I don't know. I haven't looked it up for that product, but
yeah.
Lots of sensors.
Yeah, you definitely, you know, I don't want to make light of the other improvements, the increased flight time, the better connectivity from remote to drone, and of course, the fact that it is now a 1-inch sensor. I saw significant improvements in photos and in video as well. I shouldn't say significant improvements in video. In good light, it's quite similar, but in photos, it's significantly different, going from basically a 12 megapixel kind of just, you know, smartphone style sensor to a 1-inch 20 megapixel sensor. It's very noticeable.
Well, significant compared to that little toy one that we were flying around your house last time I visited, and promptly went right into your print on your wall.
That's right. Yeah. That I still am pretty impressed. That's the DJI Tello that you're referring to.
That's right. I can remember that.
Yeah, around Black Friday, it sold for about 88 bucks, or 80 bucks. I think it's sitting at like $100. It really can't handle anything outside more than the lightest of breezes, but it really holds its position pretty well. And if you're not flying it stupid into the wall, it's pretty impressive. And even with that, it just bounced off, fell down to the ground, and then was able to fly again 30 seconds later.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so all things good. So the beginning of the show is where Steve and I chat. The other thing I want to mention is I'm feeling kind of whiskery, and I look over at you, Steve, and you are so clean shaven right now.
This is like 10 minutes old. I was at the gym around lunchtime today, and I was doing a bunch of work afterwards, and I looked at the clock. I'm like, crud, I need to get in the shower because I've got to shave. I had like field mice coming in over here, and yeah, it was pretty bad. So this is freshly shaved just for you guys.
Nice. Very nice. Well, we appreciate it. And folks, I'm sorry. Maybe I'll shave for you all next week. I definitely won't let it get this scruffy. I'm not sure how it happened. Been busy. That's my excuse. That's always my excuse.
Yeah.
So we mentioned the DJI review that just went out. If you haven't watched that, go ahead and watch. I share some more footage from Antarctica, which I love being able to do that. Excuse me. And pen members, if you're watching this show and you're a pen member, thank you so much. That's the Photo Enthusiast Network. We really appreciate your membership, and we hope you are enjoying what you're getting. One of those things that you get each week is the Tuesday tip. It was my turn yesterday. So you got a tip on my favorite sharpening method. And Caleb, I think you were in the chat. You were a little while ago. I should say hi to the chat room as well. Thank you for joining us live today. I want to thank Caleb for introducing me to this method a couple of years ago now. It is the high pass sharpening method in Photoshop. I plop over from Lightroom, and my tip shows you step by step exactly how to do it, and kind of gives you some reasons why I like it. It's really kind of the easy selectivity that you have over where you sharpen with this tool, and it works well for me. There's just so many different ways to sharpen.
Yeah, and if you guys want to get if you need more of a video tutorial on how to do that, Toby did one. I don't know, it's been 3 or 4 months ago probably now, but it was we each had a sharpening video go out almost back to back. So there's one on how to do it in Lightroom and kind of what the methodology is behind some of the sliders. And then you followed it up with a really great high pass sharpening method video. It was the same procedure, right, as we got now on the Tuesday tip. So, you know, if you read that and you want to see just how it's done in a video tutorial format, log into your membership area and check that out. That's probably under Photoshop lessons. But that was, that's a great, and I'll admit that I haven't used that. I used it a couple times after your tutorial went out, and you and I have talked about it before on tours, and it's definitely the best way to go. So I want to get in the habit of using that more frequently.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's several different options. I just really like how easily it is to control exactly where it's sharpening. It just makes sense to me, and I can't quite wrap my head around some of the other sliders and options that you get. It's option overload, really, kind of like in the unsharp mask and the smart sharpen filter. And then I'm like, well, I don't know. I don't really see a difference when I move this slider or this slider or that slider, and I do when I use my method. So yeah. But you had a great video tutorial on sharpening, as you mentioned, just in Lightroom, which usually in a lot of images is enough, and it covers exactly what's happening there and how to use those, especially the masking feature to sharpen some of the areas, and it does a pretty good job.
Yeah, that question tends to come up a lot when we're doing lessons on tours and stuff. So that was good timing on that one.
Yeah. And so I teased, last week we started with a ridiculous amount of gear on the table, $15,000 worth of gear. I think I just goofily named this show $1 on the table. There's more than $1 on the table. But yesterday went out shooting with Kaz, who's my video guy and also produced the Sony 135 millimeter video that we'll talk more about in a few moments. But and just kind of shot with all of these cameras. These are all cameras that cost right about $500. Some of them a little less, one or two a little bit more, but usually you can find them on sale. We've got the Panasonic G7, the Fuji XF10, Canon T6, Canon M100, Canon SX70. I didn't mean it for it to be so Canon heavy, but they just kind of were more popular models that fit in that range. And then the Nikon D3500. Now, Kaz and I are going to sit down tomorrow in kind of a discussion style, Steve, similar to this show, and talk about which ones work for us, which ones don't. I'm not going to spoil which one we're both really leaning to after a full day of shooting. There's a clear winner in our minds in a lot of ways, but I'll tell you what, I will share the clear loser, and I was pretty surprised by it. Do you want to guess?
I've got a little picture-in-picture that's blocking on my screen here that the viewers wouldn't have, but what's next to your left hand?
My left hand is the Panasonic G7 Micro Four Thirds sensor. And then next to that is the Fuji XF10.
Oh.
Fixed lens.
So you had a real loser in there, huh?
Yeah, yeah. Here's and I
SX, the Canon SX.
No, it's not. Here's the thing, and I can't remember how much I talked about this last week on this. I've always struggled on this channel to like name X camera the best or Y camera the best, because for some people, it might be the best. You've chosen the Hasselblad. I wasn't a huge fan of it, but for you, it is the perfect camera right now. And for me, the perfect camera is something different. Yeah. And so I think that applies to our audience as well. The what camera works best for you is very different depending on your needs. But the one that I kept struggling to really enjoy is the Canon T6.
Oh, really?
I was really surprised. It feels fairly nice in the hand. That and the fact that it is a Canon mount is really the only things going for it. Otherwise, it is so hobbled and so kind of pokey and behind all of the rest of these cameras that it's really hard to enjoy.
Isn't that kind of the case though with a lot of the Rebel non-I cameras? They always, they come out at the same time that the I model. So that's the T6. T6i also comes out, and the I is always just head and shoulders a better product. And I've never looked into it enough. Perhaps you can explain to me. I don't understand why there's such a differentiation between the T6 and the T6i as an example, and why have both?
Yeah. Well, I think they want to hit that really low price point to have on the shelf at Best Buy and to Costco. And somebody the other day made a comment on my post when I talked about the EOS RP is going to sell well sitting there on the shelf at Best Buy or Costco. They thought that I was being derogatory to anybody who buys in that location. No, absolutely not. A lot of people walk into a Costco and a Best Buy every day, and having that camera there with that price point and those big black bold numbers, that catches your eye. And I think that's what Canon is banking on. Be like, here. But man, for the exact same price, the Nikon D3500 is a really impressive camera. And again, I'll talk more about this in the actual video, but the thing that blew me away the most is Canon's always been impressive with their dual pixel autofocus. That smooth, cinematic, live view focusing, continuous autofocus. This camera doesn't have it. It's not offered in this camera. Nikon has always sucked in video focus for years and years and years. The new mirrorless are really the first that have made good strides in that and are actually quite impressive. And Nikon has, with their AFP style lenses now, done a much better job of smooth focus and quiet focus. In video, you have to hold down the shutter and the camera goes, video, it's just constantly autofocusing if you want, and it's doing it silently and pretty smoothly. So I was just really surprised by that. I didn't think that I would dislike it as much as I did. And you brought up the point that Canon has always kind of had this low price option that is pretty far behind their next model up. I would go, excuse me, I would go and say you're better off buying used last year's or last model's I version. That's going to give you better performance in almost every category than just saving a little bit to buy a new camera that's crippled.
Yeah, crippled.
So, yeah. Oh, and real quick, I forgot that we did this after last week's show. We finally sat down together as a pen group, myself, you, David, and Allie, and picked our images of the year, our photographers of the year of the pen members, our image of the year, and then we each got to pick one of our own favorite images that had been submitted over the course of the whole year.
Yeah, I forgot that happened after the show as well. That's definitely worth bringing up. And one of the things that we did, or David McKay did, when he sent that out, both in email format and a link on the Facebook page, is we didn't give away who won what. He tagged the people, you know, congratulations to this list of names, but we really encourage you to go and check that out. If you haven't watched any of those videos, watch the annual one. It's really cool because you kind of get an overview of a lot of the great stuff that was submitted last year. And we pick photograph of the year, and then like a runner-up and a third place. And then we do the same thing with photographer of the year and a runner-up and a third place. And that was a lot of fun. And that's the first time that we've ever done all four of us on the line together for anything that we've put out to pen. You know, we collaborate all the time. Usually it's through GroupMe or texting or whatever, and we've got a schedule that we follow and stuff. But it sounds odd, but to get all four of us on the line at the same time sometimes is just a big pain in the butt with everything that we all have going on. So I really enjoyed that. I love when we're able to get the whole team together. And, you know, that's what started the company. I mean, we all work so well together as a group that we wanted to be able to work together in between tours. And so that was a real special video. And then just the other day, what's today is Wednesday. So I think it was yesterday, we put out February's image review. And for that one, it was David and myself. And then we had a special guest, David Carr, who's one of our instructors with McKay Photography Academy. He was a guest judge on the February review. And so go check that out as well. And actually with that, we made mention of this at the end of the February review, and I think he's in here. Brian Scanlon, happy birthday, buddy. Oh, yeah. I think I got it right. We said his birthday was yesterday when we were recording the video. I said, nah, I think his birthday's tomorrow, but that's fine if we send it out tomorrow.
Well, here's the truth. Facebook apparently is down, so I don't know anybody's birthday.
I know. I just, and I can't remember if I got on and did happy birthdays today, but yesterday David Carr mentioned that it was Brian Scanlon's birthday. Spoiler alert, he's up there on the February image review. No surprise. So big shout out to Brian. And I said, no, I wished all my happy birthdays on Facebook today, and I didn't see him. Turns out it's today, the 13th. Yeah. Fellow Pisces like me. I'm in 2 days.
Yeah. And we got a couple people in chat saying they haven't watched that video yet. Yeah, I loved doing that with you all. I hope I'll get to be on as a guest at some point here in the coming. It was a lot of fun. And, you know, I've seen these videos come out over the course of the last year. I've seen the images submitted there. You know, I see that folder that they end up in. But to be able to sit down and really kind of look over the group of images and just love them all so much. They were fantastic images. Yeah. And those of you who are pen members in the chat room, and if you didn't participate this last year, go for it this year. You've got nothing to lose. You've seen that we just provide good, constructive feedback. And yeah, I'm going to say it's good, even though it's me and you and David and Allie giving it. I really feel that what we share. Oh, sorry, Steve?
It is good, constructive feedback. Huh. I slept well the night after we recorded that, so it's legit.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah. And if you're watching this and you're not a Photo Enthusiast Network member, this is just one of the avenues you have for getting kind of regular and seriously constructive and good, as I said, feedback on your images. And it's just a great way to grow as a photographer. So you can learn more about that at photorec.tv/pen. It's just one of many benefits you get. We already talked about the weekly tips, the weekly new videos, and then of course the community forum and the Facebook page when Facebook isn't down. It's been a while since Facebook has been down like
I
this.
was going to say, I can't even recall a time that it was down. I was trying to post some various comments a while back, and it said failed and failed and failed. And I could like stuff, and it looked like that took okay, but who knows?
Yeah.
You know, it's just, I figured something was wrong with my cell connection or me, because, I mean, for as much as I can gripe about Facebook, it's pretty stable in terms of uptime.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised. But let's all take this as an opportunity to just disconnect from Facebook and Instagram for a little portion of our lives and enjoy the real world.
Wait, what does that mean? I don't understand.
Yeah,
can't comprehend.
It's a wild and crazy place out there.
Hey, speaking of wild and crazy, let's dive into, we have submitted a couple of images into our Lightroom's tips and tricks section. And again, if you're a pen member, you get to submit these images each week that Steve and I aren't traveling. We do this show, and this is available to you. So I'm going to share my screen now. We've got two. Oh, I have to click on me here too. And there we go. We got two images to talk about. First up, Kevin Walk, and when you said wild and crazy, you know, this made me think of it. This fantastic wave right as it's breaking over some rocks. You can see that, Steve?
Yeah, I can.
Okay.
And it looks very sharp.
It does.
Is it as sharp as it looks on my screen?
Yes, it may even be a little over sharp. I'm trying to decide, you know,
what's the, do we have, is this a DNG? No, it's matted, so it's probably a PSD file or something.
It is a PSD file, that's correct. Yep.
Do we show any, do we have camera data on that?
We do. ISO 100, 60 millimeters, f5.6, 1/320th of a second.
That'll do it, man. That'll capture water droplets. Yeah, I see what you mean. Okay, you can see in the sky there's some grain in there behind the droplets, which is fine. You know, I mean, you got the right shutter speed in there, and you could do maybe a little softening if you're going to blow this up really big. But I love how crisp it is.
Yeah. Yep.
And I like the fact that this was done as a black and white, because it'd be interesting to see it in color for sure, but as a black and white, now you're totally focused on the detail in the rocks and each little droplet of water that's splashing around those rocks. So I think if you had color in this, it would be a distraction from those two elements. Mm-hmm. So, you know, Kevin, great job on going black and white with this.
Yeah, I like the rocks on the left and the right are framing kind of our central subject, which works really nicely. The only thing, this might be, I think you've done some sharpening to it, and I might back that sharpening off a bit in the sky, just because there's a little bit of noise back there. And, you know, even though it's at ISO 100, if you sharpen or if you bring up shadows, you can certainly get some noise. It's not distracting. I think it's fine. The other thing that I'm wondering about is we seem to have a bit of a halo here around this rock on the top left.
Yeah, there's some pretty heavy vignetting, especially noticeable in the upper left corner. I wonder if there was a filter used.
Yeah. Yep, that's a good point. So I would, little things, I'd watch out for that. Over here, it just kind of feels like it's part of that cloud, not too much of an issue. And I'm not really seeing it on either spot. So I would brighten this just a tiny bit. And then I also would be very careful about this halo here. If you had to brighten this rock a bunch in Lightroom, you could brush on brightness and make sure auto mask is turned on. And it should confine itself to the edges of the rock if you're fairly careful. And you want to kind of watch that. And if that halo is natural, then I might bring in a little brush to darken just to try to even it a little bit more. But yeah, really overall nice. Love the light kind of coming through in these dots. And I do think, as you said, Steve, the choice of going black and white here really simplifies and kind of contrasts the textures.
Yeah, and so with this picture, it does leave me wondering a couple of things. I like the way it's framed too, with the rocks on both sides. I kind of want to see more of the rocks on the right side, just be really, you know, if you're going to do this, just be really intentional about the fact that you're using the landscape and the foreground as your natural framing elements. Because it's, you know, you're seeing some of it, but it kind of ends abruptly. And I'd like to see a little bit more. But I don't know if that's even possible, depending on where you're standing. The other option is to move over to your left a little bit and make that foreground on the left a little more prominent, and then not have the rocks on the right side. So everything just kind of leads out to where the water's hitting that rock as a rule of thirds rather than right in the middle. So just some things to kind of think about. And also, if you have multiple shots from here and you have one that's similar without that dark splash of water that runs exactly vertical and intersects with the horizontal line of the clouds, that might be a good one to use, because you'd still get the idea that the water is hitting that. It's just you got this really kind of dark area that's going straight up, that's a totally different color than the rest of the splash, and then it's intersecting with the dark clouds up there. So that just becomes this kind of visual thing that once you notice it, it's kind of hard to look away from that. Just a couple things to think about. I'm not, you know, getting overly critical here. It's a great shot.
Yeah.
And you know, the way it's processed and stuff, Kev, you did an excellent job. But you know, depending on what kind of options you have, just things to think about.
Yeah, I think great suggestions. And we've got Sizzleman in the chat asking what causes the spike in the histogram. And it wasn't until I cropped that I realized exactly where that spike is coming from. So this is showing lightness values, and it happens to be this border right here, because it is just that perfect amount of lightness corresponds to that spot on the graph right there. And the way I know that is, and I like this about Lightroom, this is why I often crop early on in the process, because I use the histogram to inform my editing. And if you crop first, it shows you the cropped area in the histogram, and you can see immediately that spike goes away. And as I would expect for this image, it's pretty evenly distributed across the top, across the whole histogram. The tones in this image are, you know, kind of a full range. There's not any, it doesn't tend towards heavy dark or heavy bright. Heavy bright? I don't know what that is. It doesn't tend toward bright or dark.
Yeah, so there's a couple. I'm watching some of the comments in the chat room. Well, first of all, David Watts says he wants to know if there's a cocktail stream again, and we need to do that again because he wishes it was, and so do I right now. But so that aside, one of the comments by Darko says, "Do you suggest exposing to the right?"
Mm-hmm.
And I'm left kind of wondering what he's talking about. Is he talking about the brighter spot there where the water is?
No, I think I think it's a general question. You know, in general, when you're out there photographing, do you tend to expose brighter or a little darker, or right in the middle? That's I could be wrong. Correct us if we are, Darko. But I think, Steve, typically we both recommend usually underexposing just a little bit.
Yeah, you want to try to get it in camera as good as possible. But if you are going to err one side or the other, it's always better to err a little bit on the darker side, because brightening the shadows, you can usually get detail out of there. If you blow something out, you just can't get it back. It's gone. You can't, no matter how much darkening you do, it becomes a flat spot. So yeah, I tend to err on the side of slightly underexposed if I can't just nail it.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, Kevin, thanks for sharing that. We like it. And next we have a shot from my hometown from Jeremy when he was visiting Seattle. This is, if you've ever been to Seattle, we have the famous gum wall, which is exactly as it sounds. Steve, I'm not sure I've ever taken you there. Have you been there on your own?
I've checked it out a long time ago. I was in Seattle for a meeting, and of course, that was one of the things I had to go. I did not participate in it, and I found it extremely disgusting. But, you know, I've seen it.
Yeah, it's basically people's chewed up gum stuck to a wall, times like 1,000.
Yeah.
So this, Jeremy, though, chose not to showcase that. Thank you, Jeremy. This is just a little bit down, like literally 50 feet down the alley, and it's got kind of this cool neon sign. Kind of a neat shot. I like it. I like it.
Yeah, this is cool. Jeremy actually had a great showing of a Seattle shot in our February image review. So another plug for that video. Go check it out. It's a beautiful shot. And this is really neat. The only thing that I would really kind of suggest we take a look at here as a tip is, well, a couple of things. I'm looking at, to the left of the word post, there's the green is reflecting on the lamp, and it's right at the edge of the frame.
Yeah, I see what you're talking about right here.
Right about there too, you can see the vertical line of part of the wall structure is really leaning at a diagonal place. So I would probably just, since you got that in there, I would just probably crop in a bit to lose that, because once you notice that, all of a sudden it just kind of takes your eye crooked and off the page.
Yeah.
So I would take that in a bit. And then I'd kind of square it up. So if you go to transform, Toby, on the develop panel there, and hit auto just to see what Lightroom does. That's actually pretty good. It does make post alley crooked.
Yeah.
Get that, but you know, it's a sign. Like, it can be a little crooked. The important thing is the building is straight up and down. Yep. The other thing you can do, if you click off in the transform tool and then click guided.
And just to get background for Steve, I knew, Steve, this is where you're going to go with. Steve, you are a real estate photographer, and so you always make sure your lines are very straight and neat. And when I saw this, I thought to myself, I bet the dollar that's not on the table that Steve is going to want to straighten these lines.
Yeah, it's pretty much a given. I'm a stickler for that, and not in a critical sense necessarily. Just I'm kind of just wired that way now, given how much work I've done with architecture. So yeah, squaring those up, and then I would do a horizontal from one corner of that sign to the other, probably that top corner. Actually,
I see what you're saying.
What you did right there was pretty good. But
let's see what happens when we do that. A little bit more.
Yeah,
So
you're allowed 4 guided lines, and you can only do 2 in either direction to really tell it to do anything. So you got 2 verticals that Toby drew initially, and that squared those walls up, and then you've got the horizontal that he drew initially right down the middle, and then another one at the post alley. So that kind of squared those 2 up, and now you've got something that is all squared up, and I'm happy.
Yep. Yeah, it's this little tool that you grab to draw these lines right here. I think a lot of times people forget that these are tools. You can also find it in the basic panel with the white balance pickup, and in the crop tool with the aspect and angle. So, you know, if an image is crooked, just, you know, the whole image equally crooked, this works. But this transform tool, and we've talked about this before, Steve, you put videos up on Pen that show this in detail, is really powerful in kind of getting these lines straight. And I think that's a nice improvement. The only thing that I would add is, and it's kind of fixed itself now by getting cropped out, is this little bit of the bottom drain pipe was catching a little bit more light than I liked. So I might either crop that in a tiny bit more, or I might darken that a little bit to hide it. But otherwise, I think this is a pretty cool shot. We've got kind of a nice balance of people, Jeremy. I don't know if you waited or it just worked out, but we've got this person, then off in the distance on the left side, off in the distance on the right side. And that's something to think about when you're shooting. You know, these are dark objects in kind of a brighter lit area. And so they have a certain weight to them. A heavy, bright weight, if you will, which John in chat says is 32% brighter than something else. Yeah, I think this is nice.
Yeah. There's another, I know we have questions at the end, and some of these we collect and we talk about, but one other question just popped up and I wanted to address it real quickly. Darko had asked about our experience with Capture One.
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan of Capture One. In fact, I made the decision to completely do away with Lightroom and move everything over to Capture One. I had their trial version a while back, and once I got used to the graphical user interface of it, I really enjoyed it, and it does a phenomenal job of processing raw files. And if you're going to do any tethering, that's the gold standard. Unfortunately, since that time, I picked up the Hasselblad camera, and because Phase One, who makes Capture One, is a direct competitor to Hasselblad in the medium format world, they will not support those files without me stripping all of the metadata out of my raw files to use Capture One. So it's just kind of a personal, just it bugs me because I really want to use it. It's a great program. He mentioned, I think he's got a Fuji. They have a Fuji version of it. I just highly recommend it. We tend not to talk about it much on this show because Lightroom and Photoshop are, you know, they're the big elephants in the room, and most people are using that. But if you like it, I think it's just an outstanding program.
Yeah, I agree. And I use Lightroom for no other reason than I'm very comfortable in it. And I cringe when I say that because, like, here I am educating people about how to be better photographers, how to be better post processors, and I myself don't take the time to learn this other program as well as I know Lightroom. But Lightroom is good enough for me that I'm happy, but I know there can be some improvements, and I keep wishing that I could make myself take the time to take a look at it. I know with Fuji files, there are a lot of people that are quite happier, and they've done a nice job in recent days,
and I don't want to hijack things too much here. Is it possible to share your screen again, Toby, on that last picture that we did some transform?
Yeah.
On? Are those changes still active?
Yes.
Okay. Kate said that she has trouble in transform except for the auto settings, which I totally get it. In fact, the reason I had you click auto to begin with is because I want to see what Lightroom suggests. And a lot of times it does a really nice job, and I can kind of leave it alone. But more often than not, especially with the type of work that I do, I'm in the guided transform tool. There's one other little tip that I wanted to show. So if you go back to guided to where the lines are showing,
I killed them. Oh, no, there they go. Yep, I got it.
Okay,
sorry.
now, if it doesn't square it up the way you want, you can click on that line and you can drag it just slightly one direction or another, and it will kind of show you what it, you know, and this is a great way to just play around and see how it works. It's like Keystone on an LCD projector, if you've ever used those.
Yeah.
You know, that's kind of what it's doing. And just little slight tweaks can make a big difference. So if you draw these lines and it just looks all wonky, you can certainly start over, but I'd encourage you to just kind of just move those around side to side and see if you can square things up. So
yeah,
just forgot about that tip earlier.
That's a great tip. And also I want people to know that you're not, you don't just have to use this on human created architecture. I use this in landscapes from time to time. If lines, you know, if that far horizon is straight but feels a little awkward against a group of trees or something like that, I will certainly use the guided tool to kind of massage things in the direction I want to go. And if you mouse over any one of these options here in the transform tool, you can use them, but you can also just get that tight graph paper grid on there that might help you kind of judge whether or not lines are as straight as you would like them.
Yep.
Nice. Awesome. Nice tips. Thank you, Jeremy and Kevin, for submitting images. We appreciate it. And if you're not a Pen member and you'd like to see us work on your image and give you some tips and tricks for Lightroom for making it better, you can become a Pen member at photorec.tv/pen. And it's just one of your many benefits. Also, I wonder, Darko, are you you submitted an image to that Drunken Critiques series that Steve and I did? I mean, there might be more than one Darko out there, but I don't know how many Darkos follow this channel. And
was it had to have been the one where we were commenting how cool the name was.
Yeah, that's a good name.
That's where we met Kyle, I think. Kyle Skudlick. I may have just botched the last name, but he had one on there, the Drunken Critiques, and I thought we were talking about
Kyle came to Iceland.
Yeah, and then later he came to Iceland. I think we recorded those before Iceland.
That's right. That is before. That's right. You're right. You're right.
But Darko, I remember that name. If it's the same dude, or I'm assuming it's a male name. So my apologies if it's not. It could be one of those androgynous names that. But I want a name like Darko. That's a rad name.
They're Canadian. You still want, you have to be a Canadian to have the name, apparently. No, I don't know. Okay, let's move on to news.
They're all so cool.
A couple of quick news articles that I just want to rattle off. Roy, thank you for collecting these. Every week, Roy collects news articles that he thinks we'll find interesting. You can hear and see and read from their sources by going to photorec.tv/MMH. That stands for Mish Mash Highlights. I'm going to rattle off a couple. One is Huawei, a cell phone manufacturer of cell phones that I enjoy. They're struggling a little in the US with some issues, but they've been caught faking photos again, this time for their upcoming P30 Pro using a DSLR. In the past, it's been things like they've shown, I don't know if this was Huawei, but there was a video that was supposed to be taken by the phone, super smooth, and then it goes by some reflective surface, and you can see that it's actually a DSLR and a gimbal system.
Didn't MKBHD do a video on that where a bunch of people who were sponsored by Huawei and other phone companies where, you know, you post on Twitter and all of a sudden it says, it's either Twitter or Instagram, it says shot with an iPhone. Oh,
well, that was the Gail Gadot controversy where he got blocked by Gail Gadot. That's right. That's right. Yeah. She said something like, "This is my favorite phone," and it's for Huawei, and it was posted by an iPhone. It's just kind of silly. Can't they get this stuff together?
I know, seriously. Come on, she's Wonder Woman too. She can figure this out.
I know. She's a cute Wonder Woman. I don't care what she posts with. She can block me any day.
She's forgiven. You post with a DSLR, no big deal. It's Gail Gadot or Gal Gadot.
Yeah. All right. Lens rental confirmed. So I mentioned this. Kaz did my review our review, the channel's review of the Sony 135 millimeter. Found it to be excellent. If you shoot Sony and you're interested in what will be a fantastic, or what is a fantastic portrait lens, well, Lens Rentals has confirmed it is the sharpest of its kind. I could click over and show you the MFT charts. We don't really need to look at them, but it's really sharp. And I love Lens Rentals blogs written usually by Roger, who is one of the founders of Lens Rentals, because their blogs are based in science. And I consider myself a man of science. See, here's the thing. When I test gear, it's almost always just one. So if I have an opinion about this lens, it's often based on just this one lens. And that's true of most YouTubers. And so there are times where we run across something and we're like, well, that's terrible. Well, we might have got a bad copy. Now, that's part of a review in itself. Well, okay, their quality control might not be so good. I'm using the Canon as example, but that's not really fair. It happens to everybody. But what I love about Roger and Lens Rental is their gear shelves are packed deep with multiple copies. And when he posts about gear, it is after testing multiple copies almost all the time. And so they tested 10 copies of this lens. That's a pretty good sample size when we're talking about lens testing, and found it to be exceptionally sharp.
That's cool. I never really thought about that, but it's a great way to kind of add credibility to what they're doing.
Yeah, it's cool. So I love if you're kind of on the nerdy side of camera stuff, I definitely am in that camp. I pretty religiously watch for Roger's posts and read them and enjoy them. So that's interesting. And it's also nice to know that Sony really is turning out some really nice lenses. They are on the more expensive side, but there's a value there that is decent. It's not like just because it's some certain brand that it's really expensive.
Yeah. Yeah. Who would buy that crap?
I don't know. You put a name on it, a fancy name on it, one of those Swedish names. Wait, is it Swedish?
All you have to do is stamp handmade in Sweden, and I want it.
All right, let's move on. Oh, this is interesting. Is this the new entry-level Nikon Z? So let me share my screen. This is from Nikon Rumors, and we've got some images of what might be a very entry-level model for the new Nikon mirrorless system.
Now you can see that people are starting to get really lazy on the nomenclature for Nikon Z system, because technically it's a Z space 6, a Z space 7.
That's right.
And this would be, I'm guessing, a Z space 1. But the whole article, and I've seen this now from a bunch of different articles, they just put it together. I can't say that I blame them, but there was something that came out right after the camera was introduced. I'm like, okay, well, that's a little lame, but okay. So I just had to point that out.
Thanks for pointing that out. I'm glad you're on top of it. That's true. It's interesting. We talked about this. Kyle and I talked about this yesterday a bit when we were handling the M100. We've got mirrorless system from Canon at the APS-C size sensor level. And then, of course, we have their 2 models on their R mount level or full frame. And there isn't really compatibility right now. And on the Nikon side of things, Nikon really doesn't have a lower level mirrorless, an APS-C size mirrorless. They had the J series one, but that was a 1-inch sensor and very small, and it hasn't sold too well outside of the Asian countries. So it's interesting to see if they go to a system like this. It is stamped with FX right around the lens mount, so that makes me think that it is a full frame mount. But will they come out with a crop sensor mirrorless at some point? Will Canon come out with a crop sensor mirrorless that feeds into the RF line? There's a lot of questions that I'm excited to see the answers to. I think we'll be waiting at least a year, maybe a little bit more, before we really feel like we know how these guys are going to kind of shake out their lines. But it's an interesting time.
Yeah, it is an interesting time, and I do think that the answer to those rhetorical questions is yes and yes. I think it is a matter of time before these companies, because like the Z series and then the R, the EOS R series, that's going to, my speculation anyway, become kind of their new standard. Because everything's just shifting to that mirrorless market, and there's just more you can do with it. I know we've talked about that a lot on this show. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if you end up with some crop sensors and some full frames from the entry-level full frame all the way to high-end professional or sports photography full frames within those lens mount systems. It is an interesting time, though, because all this stuff costs a lot of money. So if you're coming to the table with nothing prior and no specific loyalty to any brand, where are you going to dive in? You kind of decide, okay, I'll go with this brand. And then like Canon is a perfect example. Do you want to go with the M model? Do you want to get into the EF series with the DSLRs? Do you want to go with the R? So it's kind of a mess right now, and I'm looking forward to the day when it's a little bit more streamlined in terms of just the overall offerings.
Yeah,
lens mounts.
Yeah, it's good points. One of the questions that I want to talk about tomorrow, when I kind of talk about these pieces of gear, and it has different weight for different people, but which one do your friends and family use? I think carry some weight to it, because not only is there, you could be like, hey, what does this button do on my camera when you're over at your dad's house, or when you're at your friend's house, or when you go out for an afternoon of photography? But you can also be like, oh, you have that macro lens. Can I try that for a few moments? Yeah. So there's a lot of power in kind of buying into what your friends and family have. But that also shouldn't hold you back from, if there's a system that or you think will work really well for you, that you could try as well. So, I mean, I do think that is still a strength for Canon and Nikon. You walk into the store and you're like, oh, that's the one my friend has, or that's the one that I know so-and-so took on vacation. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I'm really excited to sit down with Kaz tomorrow and talk about all of these. There's one, again, I want to tease this. There's one for me that just is so lovely on so many levels. But I was just kind of disappointed in the Canon. Nikon's great as well.
Fuji.
I mean, it's neat. But if we're talking about your first camera, the fact
that's the XF10.
Yeah, fixed lens, fixed at 28. Which, is a decent all-purpose focal length. But I think if you're a beginner, you're going to be quite frustrated at that level very quickly.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but it's pocketable. It's pretty nice to have an APS-C size sensor that is so nicely pocketable.
Yeah.
But sensor size isn't everything. That's a hint. Yeah.
Oh boy.
Yeah. And Brian says there you got the fixed lens XF100, but yeah, it's over 1K. So yeah.
Yeah. If you're sticking with that $500 price point, because I was really close to picking up that XF100 before the Vietnam trip last year, when David McKay got one for a walk around camera. Man, that thing is just awesome. But it was the $1,000 price point that put me off on that. You know, that's a lot of, you got to really commit. Not saying $500 isn't a lot of money, but you know, if you want to kind of, if it gets good reviews and you want to test the waters of a certain brand or something for a while, plunk down $500 that on a camera that can do what you want it to do, and that's awesome if you can find it.
Yep, that's a good point. And
this is a good review that you guys are doing.
Yeah, I'm excited for it to kind of to wrap it up. And, you know, I'm seeing lots of mentions, well, because Brian's in the chat, but not only Brian, David too, the Fuji. I mean, the XT3 is, you know, in for testing as well. That's going to be a separate video. It's really hard not to completely love that camera. I mean, you have the physical dials, but you can also assign the, you know, the dials to be more of a standard, faster style camera if you want. So it is very flexible in the way you set it up. It's excellent quality. It remains kind of that sweet spot. It really depends on how much you travel, how much you value kind of lightweight and portability. But having that APS-C size sensor in that Fuji and have it perform as well as it does, it's a nice camera. Yeah,
I can't wait to see that review. I'm super impressed with that camera.
Yeah. Let's move on to a couple other news stories. This one caught my eye from F-Stoppers, the important career building exercise you might be ignoring. And so this is good advice. And, you know, I have to remind myself this from time to time as well, because believe it or not, I consider myself a bit of an introvert. You know, I make these videos and share them with the world, but I do it here inside my little studio all by myself. And every once in a while, I'm lucky enough to have my friend Steve come along with me. But networking, actually getting out there and talking to other people, making new friends, opens you up to new ideas, styles, techniques, meeting potential mentors, clients, partners, and being able to introduce your work to other people. So this is all about networking. And, you know, it's that age-old adage. Is that how it goes? Of it's not what you know, but it's who you know. It's so true. And it remains so true today in this very connected society. There's nothing like actually getting out and meeting real people in the real world.
Yeah. So I struggle sometimes, believe it or not. Like you mentioned, Toby, I do consider myself at times extremely introverted, basically meaning that I can go out and be extrovert. I can be social and whatever, you know, people think about with an extrovert, but I need to go recharge my batteries. And because for me, it's draining, it's energy draining. It doesn't mean that I'm not enjoying it or anything. It's just some people get really energized in those types of situations, and some people it drains them and they need to go recharge their batteries so they can keep doing what they're doing. And that's me. And so networking in situations like Rotary clubs and stuff like that, some people just love that stuff. I personally can't stand it. I did some of that in past careers, and they always felt like a quid pro quo sort of relationship. And I like the first bullet point that they mentioned was making new friends. That for me is always a real driving point and a hot spot. That I'm into making new friends. You know, and like getting involved with like-minded people and that kind of thing. If you go in there with that as a mindset, in my opinion and my experience, just to be around like-minded people and make some new friends and have some fun together, you will probably be successful in networking. And you know, kind of opening your eyes to the opportunities to say yes, and then knowing your boundaries and when to say no is extremely important. But if that's your motivation, I think that that's very pure and you're going to go a long way. If you go into it just, you know, I'm going to scratch your back so that you scratch mine, and you're just kind of, people know that. They know it through your body language. They know it through your tone and through your actions and stuff. And So you got to be really, really careful about how you're networking and what your true intentions are. Because it drives me absolutely crazy to go into situations where it's just obvious that you're having a conversation with somebody and they keep looking around the room to see if there's somebody more important that they should be talking to.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah.
I just have to kind of get on my soapbox about that a little bit, because networking has gotten me a long way in my career, but there's also parts of it that just drive me absolutely crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. No, those are great points. And, you know, every once in a while, I'm lucky enough to be invited along to press events where there are other YouTubers, other photography reviewers, some of whom you all don't see. They're not YouTubers. They write for different publications, either DP Review or Imaging Resource. I always love these events because it's so much fun to chat with other people, to network, to think of collaborations, to just kind of, you know, get outside your own bubble. And so there's just a lot of different ways to do that. Photo walks is one of them. Join our community is another, you know, and then go on a photo tour. It really is important, though. I think I want to stress the fact that we're really stressing here real face-to-face meetings. And you know, Brian mentions this. He feels like one of the reasons that Penn is great is that many of us have met each other on tours. And I think there is a difference of a way a community interacts with each other when people know each other, you know, in person. You know, I
couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
I mean, we talked about Kyle Skuglick earlier today. You know, it kind of started out as a name that we mentioned on one of our drunken videos or our drinks and critiques. And then he came out on a tour with us, and I'm like, okay, there's a face with the name. And then over the course of an Icelandic trip, you develop this friendship. And now you see his name pop up in the chat room, and you're like, that's my buddy, that's my bro. You know, it's there's something really, really special about going out and doing something that you're passionate about while making new friends along the way and sharing those experiences together. You know, it's really, you can go down this rabbit trail that gets, for me, gets to a really deep, meaningful place. I've never been a person that has been good at driving a line between this is my work and this is my personal life. To me, everything in life is personal. We're humans. We're made to do this together. And so, you know, it's a very, very important career building exercise is networking, but also, you know, look internally and make sure that you're doing it for the right reasons.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. And, you know, it also, I get reminded this, I'll just say this really quickly because it's a little off topic, but again, being able to meet personally, going on these workshops, I see participants show up with gear that I've recommended. And it just really drives home the point that there are real people out there watching these videos and listening carefully to what I say. And I want to make sure that I'm doing a good job, only recommending gear that's worthwhile or, you know, being as truthful as possible about all the gear in front of me. I like that. I like that in-person reminder from time to time. Andrew in chat says he joined a local photography Facebook group and was disappointed it was very ego boosting driven. I don't know if you met any of them in person. They might be different in person. That's kind of what we're saying here. But at least you joined and tried it out. You would never know otherwise. So keep trying these things, even if one group doesn't work and maybe even in person it doesn't. That doesn't mean they're all going to be like that. I think there's a lot of good people out there, and the personalities online, as we're saying, can be different.
Yeah. You think?
This isn't how I am at all. I'm very different. I'm very proper. I'm always clean shaven. This is makeup. I don't know what I'm talking about. Just gonna stop.
Stuck on.
Real quick, we're getting close to wrapping this show up, but I love this light stocking article, lightstocking.com, how to fix color casts when shooting in different lighting conditions. So, Steve, you probably run into this from time to time when you're shooting in a home. Do you have any tips before we get into this article? If you're shooting in a house and you've got like daylight coming in, you've got lights inside, how do you balance that?
Well, in real estate, it's kind of, I'm not going to say easy, but everything's on a tripod and I'm bracketing. Mm-hmm. So, you know, you light the room up as much as possible, but I'm also getting, I'm getting like 5 exposures from each angle I'm shooting. So I've got a lot of dynamic range that I can play with in selecting my photos and piecing those together. Getting it in one shot, that's kind of a different different story. So for that, let's punt it back to you because I want to hear what the article has to say.
Yeah. Okay. I thought, thanks for that, the kind of that input. From my days as a wedding photographer, this was really something that would be an issue at times. You know, I typically photograph the groom getting ready and the best men. And they'd be doing it in a room with, you know, lamps, and then sometimes there'd be a window or two, and you have very different colors coming from the lamps, whether they're fluorescent or incandescent or LED, and of course the daylight outside. Typically, if I could, I'd turn the lights off and it'd be like, hey guys, you know, it's a little darker in here, but we're going to have much more even and natural looking light. And then you just have the guys get ready by the windows. But they've got a couple of great tips in here. One is if you're stuck with the colors, try to at least kind of find a balance in those colors. Kind of a blue and an orange can work together. Think about that. And I love, this is number 3 that I was mentioning, or no, which one was I mentioning? Switch off certain light sources. So number 5 was, I think, the easiest way to deal with that. You've got off color lights, just turn them off.
Yeah.
That's get rid of them. Another is overpower existing ambient light. So a flash can do that, or a nice LED panel, you know, if you're doing video work. And then another one, and I don't want to steal all of these points, but just kind of throw a couple of them out there. Use gels to match color temperature. Gels refers to thin colored strips of semi-transparent plastic that you put over the top of your flash or your LED panel to match the room's temperature, typically orange, and it just kind of warms it up. And of course, if you're shooting raw, you can fix white balance in post. And there was this one up here, shoot your subjects with a gray card. That can help you kind of nail that white balance. But it still doesn't solve the issue if on one side of the face, you've got daylight hitting it, and on the other side of the face, you have an incandescent light. So the best thing to do is to move people around. And the best tip I can give, you know, we're talking about when you're working with a person, is to move the person. Pretty early on, as I was a nervous photographer, I would be like, I got to take your picture, click, and I would just do it wherever. And then I started realizing how much work that was making for me in post. Well, I mean, one of the ways you just turn them all black and white, but that's cheating. Not everybody always wants their pictures delivered in black and white. Then I realized, oh, the light is terrible on you right there. Can you step 3 feet this way? Or can you come over by this window with me? And, you know, if my job was to capture these people in the best light, figuratively and literally, they're completely willing to take a moment and do that. So don't be shy about moving people is a big tip that I have.
Yeah, and that actually calms the whole scene down because people want to be told what to do when they're being photographed. I'm much more comfortable being photographed if somebody's telling me exactly kind of what to do. If I have to just, you know, stand there and I don't know, it's kind of uncomfortable. I'm looking to the pro to tell me what to do. So. Yeah.
Yep, that's a great point. We're moved on to our last section before we get to the Q&A. I guess our second to last section. That's photos from space. And this is kind of neat. From The Verge, it is images of galaxies that were being taken by a astrophotography telescope when an earthquake happened. They look just like seismographs. They look just like the little line that gets drawn on paper when you have an earthquake.
Yeah.
Huh. I just thought that was interesting.
That is interesting. Huh. Something you don't really think about, right? We're always talking about tripod shake out on tours.
Yeah.
Everything from your camera straps are hanging down from your camera to, you know, your lens cap, and don't hold on to it. And all these things we do to get rid of it. But what about earthquakes with these cameras that are shooting out into space?
Yep.
Interesting.
It'd be kind of fun. I wouldn't mind having a story as long as everybody around me was safe. I wouldn't mind having a story of, hey, that image is blurry because of an earthquake. Maybe I'll start saying that. Must have been an earthquake.
I'm going to start telling people. I shoot a lot of earthquake. I shoot a lot of photos during earthquakes, apparently.
Yeah.
We got one question before we go from David, who's in chat. He's been trying to persuade the people he works with to invest in better gear. Got any tips for making a good argument for loosening the purse strings?
Oh man.
This is a good question. I think this is a pretty hard question. I think you have to make a case for what you have now isn't doing a good enough job, or the results that you're going to see from upgrading equipment are going to be worth the investment. And that's the key to use that term, I think. Hey guys, this is an investment in the quality that we're outputting in the future.
Yeah, that's a great question. And oddly enough, I think it kind of plays back into some of the networking that we were talking about earlier, strictly from the point of, people want to do business with their friends. They want their friends' recommendations on things and stuff like that. So the closer you are in that friendship or that relationship, the more you can kind of dive into not only why important gear would be better for that person, but based on what. I mean, they don't care just because you're high on something and you want to tell them that this is the greatest thing since sliced bread. They want to know what's the feature. Okay, you gave them a feature. Now what's the benefit? And the benefit is, well, you told me that you want to start selling some of your work. You may want to consider investing in better gear, thinking about it from purely an investment standpoint. If you are getting better pictures and you can sell one for $1,000 versus $500, then okay, spend $3,000 on a pro body and figure out how many images you're going to need to sell to make that back, and is it going to be worth it over time? But you can't get into those deeper discussions as to how it's going to benefit that particular person unless you have a relationship built. So it kind of starts there, I think. And then, it's just preaching, good gear doesn't really get anybody anywhere.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that it's good. It's tough to give you more specifics without having some more specifics about the area or what you work in, but can you come up with a couple of competitors? Can you look at what they're producing, video or photos, and say, look, here's what our competitors are doing. We can't quite get that with the gear that we have.
Yeah.
Would be another way to approach it. And also, I think, again, if you're talking about lenses, lenses just last and last and last. So you can talk about that being a strong argument. If you're talking about bodies, I think it becomes more of a difficult argument, but
it's always kind of a tricky thing. This happens on tours all the time too. We do tell people, like, here's kind of a minimum of what you should have and a little bit of knowledge that you might want to have as you start a tour off. And we'll take you from, basically just to get out of the box to getting started. But, we've had people, we talk about bringing a decent tripod on a trip. It doesn't have to be an expensive tripod. Okay. You can spend $100, $150. And I get it. To some people, that might be considered a lot of money to spend on a tripod, but you're investing all this money on a photo tour with us. I think investing $150 on a decent tripod to get good shots on this major investment that you've made to come out with us isn't asking for a lot. And we have had people show up with these tripods that are hand-me-downs, literally from the 70s before, and they're falling apart and they're rickety and stuff. And I mean, then you go home with these crappy photos because everything's shaking around and nothing's stable. And so I don't know. You kind of just have to, like you said, you need more specifics. Yeah. We really need more specifics, and then you kind of have to just talk about it a piece at a time.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, just simply saying you need better gear, and you got to give them a reason for investing in better gear.
Yeah. Yeah. You could also, another way to approach it maybe is efficiency. This like the example of the tripods, you could bring a tripod from the 70s if it's sturdy and you don't mind carrying around the extra weight if you can adjust it. But what we see on the trips when people bring the cheaper tripods is adjusting them is a pain in the ass, excuse my French. And you are missing out on shot opportunities because you're like turning this and turning that, and it's just a waste of your time.
He gave a follow-up comment here. Calling out the competitors is a good shot shout. The real concern, let's see, we have fairly decent gear, but it's getting old and sensors are getting better. So that is a really great point, David, because that is the truth. You could have top of the line, and that's the other thing, is some people think that they've got a top of the line. Hey, I've got a Maxim 7000i. It was the top of the line, the first half press shutter button, autofocus camera from 1989, and it was the best camera out there when I was shooting high school photos for my school newspaper. There's no reason why that shouldn't be a great camera today. Well, it's a piece of crap today. Yeah. It literally is. I mean, anyway, sensors have, just in the last 5 years, grown by leaps and bounds. So like a Canon 5D Mark II, which was just a phenomenal camera, and it still is a decent camera. Yeah. But you put that up against, you know, say a T6i or one of the $500 cameras that you have right there with the new sensors, and yeah, maybe it's not full frame, but the megapixels and the sensor quality and stuff, you're going to get a better image probably. So that's a good point. Sensors have gone a long way. Like you said earlier, lenses are glass. They can last a long, long time. But the technology and the sensors has been moving rapidly. So if your gear is over 5 years old, depending on where it is, if it's professional or intermediate gear, anytime it's 5 years old, you know, you might want to take a look at it and just see what kind of improvements have come out. Technological improvements have come out.
Yep. And David, one of the other articles we didn't cover is when and how often should you upgrade your photography gear. This is an article from Digital Photography School. So you can find this linked at photorec.tv/MMH. That might give you some more tips as well.
Yeah.
We're going to wrap this up. We're all done talking to you today on this photo mishmash. If you're a photo enthusiast member, thank you so much for hanging out with us on this Wednesday afternoon or wherever it is when you're watching. If you're not and you want regular access to this show, to professional photographers who are willing to give you advice, feedback, and give you all kinds of educational material, well, you can learn more about it at photorec.tv/pen. And just a quick shout out to Squarespace, which really kind of supports my channel in many ways. So if you want to learn more about building a website in 2019 that is easy, looks slick, handles all of your traffic really well, you can go to photorec.tv/Squarespace. You can also go to squarespace.com/photorectv. Both those links should work. Thank them for their support. And Steve, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you guys. It's been awesome hanging out here. I appreciate it very much.
And I think we're back regular time next week, Wednesday at 2 p.m. Is it daylight or is it standard right now? Is it PDT or PST? I don't know.
We were talking about that. I never know. It's either PDT or PST, and I never know when is when. I think it's daylight savings time now, so it's PDT, but I could have them backwards.
I think it is D2, Pacific Daylight. Yep. All right, everybody. Thanks so much. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.